Welcome to our Support for the Supporters with Lisa Wise. This session will unpack what a group facilitator needs to have in their official toolkit and what hacks are useful to have in your back pocket. In case you didn't have the pleasure of hearing from Lisa at our morning's opening session, here's a little bit about our speaker. I was given the entire thing, but I'm gonna abbreviate it this time. Lisa was born into a cancer cluster family where she learned to navigate palliative care. These early experiences shaped her 25-year career as a family and patient-centered healthcare specialist, passionately bringing patient voice from disempowering hospital beds to policy-making boardrooms. She's currently serving as the Vice Chair of Information and Support for the International Waldenstrom Macroglobulinemia Foundation. I'm still having trouble pronouncing that, even though I say that and on the regular, or not super on the regular, because it's a rare disease, but from time to time. But in any case, Lisa was diagnosed with Waldenstrom Macroglobulinemia, a rare, incurable yet treatable form of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She has used her personal experience as a caregiver and patient to coordinate cancer support groups nationwide, as well as offering support, education, and information to international members of the blood cancer community. So we are super excited to introduce you again because the first time was so much fun. I'm super excited about round two. For question and answer at the end of this session, Zoom attendees, you can chat in your questions and a volunteer will read them out loud. And for in-person attendees, please wait for a microphone to ask your question, otherwise the virtual attendees will not be able to hear you. Without further ado, welcome back, and thank you, Lisa.
And a huge round of applause for Dr. Molly, who's on the planning committee and responsible for this incredible day. We are not worthy. We are not worthy. And the coolest glasses in the room once again. Upstage, my glasses are not going to make it because Molly's all of it. So I'm really glad that you're here, and thank you for joining me today. I want to come and sit with you over here. I want to give a special shout out to everybody at home who is joining us virtually. And the reason that I want to begin there is because recently I was given clearance to travel again. But because I'm immune compromised, I hadn't been traveling since 2020, so I wasn't able to do anything that wasn't on my couch in my living room. So everybody who is there at home who is watching, I just want to say that I am FOMO girl, and I lived watching everything virtually. You count, you matter. We're so glad that you're a part of this today. It's so meaningful to us that you are joining us virtually, and we feel you here in these seats beside us, and we wish you all goodness and health. So I just wanted to start with a shout out to the virtual community. And what I'd love to do is have this be a conversation, if that's okay. If you were here this morning, you know, that was like a speech, because, you know, I got to give a speech. This is more dialogue. This is if you wake me up at 3 in the morning and say, how do we do support groups? This is how we do it. This is what you'll get. So let's chat, and I want to hear what you need and want. So we'll set this up now, but basically what I would love to do is, well, I'll go over what I'd like to get done in the next 45 minutes, and what I'd really love is for a ton of participation from you. So engagements, conversations, we don't have to keep Q&A to the end. We're going to give you a support group facilitation toolkit today, and you've heard I'm Vice Chair of Information and Support at the IWMF, and I oversee 60 international support groups. I lead my own in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm the support group leader. I won't give that up because I insist on being in the room. Because if I'm not in the room with patients doing this, how in the world can I talk to the guy in India who's literally in charge of WM India about what he's doing without that, you know, day to day. I became a freelance writer because of my cancer journey, because I just said, hey, somebody's got to write about this through narrative medicine. That was one of my support pieces, and that's how I became a freelancer. And I was diagnosed with cancer 14 years ago, and you heard I'm a third-generation lymphoma patient. So let's learn about you. I'd love to know, by show of hands, only if you're comfortable, if there are cancer patients in the room. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. If there are a caregiver or care provider or friends, family, it doesn't have to only be cancer, it can be anything. Thank you. I see you. You make a difference. You make it happen, and we lean on you, and we appreciate your strength. Hi, I hope I'm not like giving my back to you. Do you feel far away? Okay, come closer if you want to. And have you been both? I bet there are folks who have been both. I know I have. That's right. That's always fun. Support group leaders, people who are actively leading support groups, I am so glad you're here. Good. And I hope there's a lot of you thinking about it, because that's what we're going to talk about today. So What is the one thing every support group leader is missing? The one thing none of us have is our own support group. And that's what this is a little bit, a feeling of like, how are we going to do this? So here's what I want to get through, 6 things today. I want to talk about practicing self-care, what's really in the room, and then I'll give you like a sample structure, but you guys will kind of make your own, jam. And then some guidelines, that's really, really important, setting the stage with guidelines, containment, boundaries, what are we here for? And the art of support group leadership, wrapping up with what I put in bold, navigating challenging group dynamics. The reason that's in bold is for me to kind of remember to ask your permission. I kind of feel like that might be one of the most interesting pieces because it's granular, it's nitty-gritty, we roll up our sleeves. We don't talk about the why support group, we talk about the how and what happens when things get derailed. If you want to get there, then you just go like, just tell me, and I'll zip through 1 through 5 and land in, this is the tough stuff, like the challenge is the icky stuff. Is that what you want to do? Or you'll see. Let's get started. We'll just see how things happen. I like you. Thanks, Julian. Okay, let's practice self-care. So if you personally need a stretch, a snack, a bio break, go for it. I want to hear from you throughout, so don't be shy. And let's begin with just 3 breaths because we're in Vermont and because I've been practicing mindfulness for a couple of years now. And I love Vermont because I feel like it goes hand in hand with some really nice self-care. So I'm just going to do 3 breaths. If you do something else, please, I honor whatever it is you need to do, including group scream. Okay, that feels good, actually. I'd like to stay there. So I want to just stay on self-care for 1 minute to talk about what your self-care plan is. How do you pay attention to your needs, and where do you feel it? Everybody feels that they might have a need somewhere. Some people feel their stomach churn, others feel it in their legs, interesting, and others in their breath, right up in the table, heart rate. Do you tend to delay? Do you go, well, we'll take care of that in a minute, meaning in 3 weeks from now when I have a break, or maybe the next vacation that we have planned. I'll just have to delay my self-care. Yeah, not so good. How good are you at communicating your needs? I'm terrible at this. I just fail every time. And who's your go-to supporter? Like, really, I encourage you to think about who do you go to for help? What does it feel like to get their help? And can you, I'm not going to make you do this, can you name 3 daily care, self-care activities? I mean 3, like what 3 things do you do every single day between the time of waking up and going to sleep that is about how you take care of your own person? Holy moly, she's mean, right? Okay, so what's sitting in the support group that doesn't, that has a chair, but isn't always acknowledged? Guilt, shame, terror, anger, isolation, caregiver burnout. These are just some. I mean, I was like, oh, this could be 20 slides long. Like, you'll see, 25 people sitting in a circle, right? Well, like in between each one of them is this, matching luggage set that they're bringing in with them that's invisible. That's all the crap of what family said about the illness, what they're thinking, and always the question at the bottom, what did I do to get this diagnosis? Why am I here? How did I get here? And that, heartbreaking, right? Heartbreaking, but so many people, why? And that's the guilt and the shame, and I hear it more often than I'd like. And then the whole anger thing I want to speak to for a minute, because anger and terror are just a flip. And sometimes you'll have someone in that support group who people find is difficult or act out or they're loud or domineering. And sometimes it's just so much sadness and so much fear and so much unaddressed emotion that needs to just be heard in a quieter space, that it comes out and acts out in this kind of place. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to deal with that specifically in group, okay? Isolation I spoke about this morning. And caregivers, I don't want to forget about that because that whole, who's going to hold me while I'm holding you? Like what universe, It's like this Herculean task of holding someone. Like, what is it like to drop in and hold someone when they really need you to be there and you're like, crap, this is one of those moments that I have to show up for this person. But like what? Where do you pull from? We don't have all the answers. We don't even know always what people need. They're not so good at telling us. So how do you stand by them? Big stuff. So I'll quickly do a sample agenda in case this is of interest, but we always do a warm welcome. This is just one way to do it, and then a statement of purpose. Why are we here? I liked one I heard recently, and I didn't have the ability to change the slide, but this is an older one, to share experiences, ideas, reactions, and resources related to living with cancer. Notice that doesn't say, to tell other people what to do or to, tell you which doctors are good and which doctors are bad. Like, there's a lot of nots that we don't list here. It's like to be here to share experiences and resources. Then we're going to review support group member guidelines on the next slide so you can see what it's like to create, set the table for guidelines, like how do we do this in a respectful, boundaried way. And then the sharing circle can be like 3 to 5 minute update per person. You can use the feelings wheel for this, where you go around and people just pick 3 words or, a couple of sentences about their update, how they're doing, depending on how big your group is. And then you move into a deeper dive where you have a group discussion and some real hot topics emerge, where you planned for this discussion with a presenter or without. And I like to let people know what it is in advance, have them think about it. I give them thought starter questions. So here's 5 questions, so that while they're going through their life and they're, well before the support group actually happens and they actually show up, some stuff has been rumbling around in your head. I don't know about you, but as I get older, I notice that stuff needs to marinate. Stuff takes on a whole life of its own. The longer we let it sit with us and we think about it, different days, different times, it feels differently in us. So allow for that. So I let them know what's going to be happening. And then at the end, each person sharing a bit of takeaway, just being able to go around, and people can pass, of course, if they don't want to speak. We always want to respect that. But give them a minute to just open it, so it opens it and it closes it, everybody's heard. It's just a nice way to, and then the next meeting info and wrapping up. I know you didn't need this, but I just wanted to walk through it because sometimes people find it helpful to just see, but what do you do when you get there? How do you start? How do you end? What if they don't want to leave?
And if you haven't been to
Right. That's a good point. Oh, Beverly, stop, Beverly, warrior friend. Okay, here's some ground rules. So at the beginning, right at the top of the meeting, we would tell folks that we're inviting them to offer thoughts and suggestions based on their personal experience. We want people to speak from their own experience, and avoiding all statements beginning with "you should." We know all this, but the "you should" is so problematic. I mean, right? It's in life, it's probably a good rule. People should just stop saying it. Share the air. This is a big one. I ask everybody to help me do this so that everyone can be heard. Everybody who wants a turn to speak needs to get a turn. It's hard to get in there. I live with a whole bunch of introverts. I'm married to one. It's a mixed married introvert, extrovert. So basically, it's, allowing space and allowing for a little bit more silence in between people jumping in. So even asking people to pause after someone shares for a minute to let it just sink, as opposed to everybody who's waiting to jump in as soon as that person ends. I'm going to be the next person in, kind of building in that Quaker pause, we call it in Pennsylvania. Be supportive and non-judgmental, so keeping it safe. And then Vegas baby is the most important. So this is the confidentiality issue. And this is super important. Confidentiality is stressed, emphasized again and again. Everything that is said in a support group is confidential. Never shall it be repeated. You meet someone out in the grocery store, you don't say, hey, I was really thinking about that point. You don't tell I had a friend in a support group that, whatever, I was in a support group and this person said X, even anonymously, you just never repeat it. It just doesn't get repeated, So the confidentiality is really important. And this is my favorite. We were talking about this morning, wait, which is group members and facilitators need to say before they're about to speak, wait, why am I talking? This next thing that I'm about to say, is it critical? Is it critical for the person? Is it critical for me? Why am I talking right now? Maybe somebody else could be. So hard to say when you're presenting to a group because it makes me want to sit down and shut up. So it's kind of a funny thing to. And then gatekeeping is managing the meeting flow responsibly and effectively. So, people want to feel that you're holding the reins. Somebody needs to be clocking. What's the time? Has everybody been heard? Like, you need to really be present. So if you're a support group leader, you can't get so into the conversation or be so that you're not also hovering on top of it going, doing the air traffic control. Like, you're like, how's that plane landing? And is that person over there okay? Do I need to follow up, and making notes to yourself? So there's a lot going on there. And I'll just mention that I do, the support groups that I talk about are peer-to-peer support. So it's all cancer patients who are volunteers, who are leading groups for other cancer patients. So we have very specific scripted language. This is not medical advice that anybody is giving. Nobody can be offering any ideas on medications that you should be taking or treatments or anything. This is all just peer-to-peer from the heart. We've walked down the path, and now we want to just walk along beside you as you walk down your path, and let's see if we can't share with each other. So we're getting through here because the artists, because we're going to talk about the difficult stuff soon, I just want to do a little time check. Oh, we're doing good, guys. We're doing good. How's everybody feeling? For real? Okay, is it resonating? Is it relatable? Is there anything particularly annoying happening that I need to know about now and not in 30 minutes from now? You need to tell me. Okay. Molly, don't laugh. You have to say. You have to hear my new BFF. Okay, so this is about those of you who are thinking about offering support groups and becoming involved. And this is kind of an important slide because it's a beautiful thing to help people who are coming down the cancer path beside you, but it takes a really big toll. So, you know, the first thing we have to do is ask for help proudly because we're modeling help. So when I went into treatment, I stepped away from my cancer support group role. And I said, I'm in treatment now and I only have one job, and that is to take care of me. So I love you all, but somebody else is going to have to, you know, we all, our groups have co-chairs, 2 or 3 people to cover, so there's no guilt or none of that unhealthy feeling, oh, but I have to take care of the cancer patients. No, you are a cancer patient. Everybody calm down and go like get your treatment and focus on you. So that's built into what we do in terms of that. So asking for help, seeking psychological support whenever needed. I can't say enough good things about that. Knowing your own triggers and recognizing them. Secondary gains is kind of, why are you interested in this work in the first place? What's your history that brought you to this moment? Why are you someone who says, I'd like to help? Or how may I be of service, Ram Dass? Why are you there? What's in it for you? And ask yourself that as like a repeating question meditatively. So that, because we say, well, I just want to help someone else. And then, you know, one of those repeating question exercises, by the time somebody asks you it 25 times, sometimes the answer changes a little bit. So I think it's important to do that work and think about what am I healing in me when I'm doing this for you? Just to hold it and know it, you know? And this is speaking to anyone who is suffering. I beg of the universe, right, to always ask themselves, am I saying this to help you or me? Because we've all had someone who was well-intentioned and well-meaning. I'm being kind. Sometimes we've had very stupid people say very stupid things to us. And, you know, I'm just like, let's own it. You know, sometimes people are there for you, and sometimes they miss. Bless their heart. They miss. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end, which is one of my favorite slides. So now we're on our troubleshooting. And so we got here, and I want to talk about like what happens when things go wrong, right? Support groups gone wild. What happens when the wheels start coming off? So a lot of people say it feels like a runaway train. This is things that the support group leaders have said to me. Can you help me with this? And if somebody's thinking about starting a support group or participating in one, you might be afraid of just these things. So hopefully one of these 6 things will speak to you. So I love having volunteers do shared group management. Some people hate that idea, by the way. They think the group leader should be the one person. And I'm like, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. So I love people having jobs. I want everybody. I want the snack coordinator bringing the cookies, you know, and then having someone as a volunteer or timekeeper is really important because then you can ask someone else to help you stay on top of it. But as a support group leader, your job is to keep very tight containment. So you really can't delegate that. You also have to be on it. That was a bit of the air traffic controlling that I was talking about before. Like you're in it with one foot, like really present, but you're also here going, that person is on the verge of tears, hasn't said a word. I really have to remember to follow up at the end of this meeting privately. You know, like You got to hold all of that. And some people talk nonstop while others can't get a word in. I also do this, a volunteer list keeper, like people will say, because I've had, like I'll have like, you know, like it can be big. It can be like 60 people in a meeting. That's a lot. A lot of people say that's too big. You can't do that. Well, I'm not going to ever shut a meeting down and say there's too many people or split up. I don't know. I feel like I want everybody in the room and we'll make it work. But then you can have one person note, you know, they kind of get the eye of that person and say, I'd like to share. And they get down on the list and then we, you know, we just work through it together. I know that feels a bit like school, but it can work because that way it's not the person who's best at jumping in and interrupting that speaks next. For me, it's the person who's spoken least. So if somebody puts up their hand 4 times to speak, that's great. But the person who speaks next is the one who's spoken least. So what are you guys saying?
Is this for in-group, in-person versus a Zoom, or are these?
Great. I love that you asked that question. Thank you for it's like a plant. We planted the question. So all of our support groups were, well, when I first started, they were all in person, and then boom, COVID, all virtual. And I had negotiated a deal with Zoom a month before COVID, just because I thought all those people who are stuck at home because of mobility issues, we need them in the room. And then we got lucky because then COVID hit. No, we didn't get lucky. Ironic, Lisa. But what I meant is we got lucky in that I had just negotiated a deal with Zoom before Zoom became Zoom. And it was like, okay. So this is for both. And it's very different when you're online because you have to watch those boxes very carefully. And there's an art to monitoring your boxes and seeing the shift. You need a couple of, that's why I recommend a couple of support group leaders. One person to kind of lead and moderate, one person to watch crowd, you know, and then usually a tech person behind the scenes who might be muting people or, you know, background noise, like your best tech person who doesn't necessarily need to read emotional faces, but is really great with, you know, setting up the Zoom. So it's like a nice way to give everybody, does that help?
Yeah.
It's much harder over Zoom, Beverly, much harder over Zoom.
Okay, I was just thinking, we have a Teams huddle every morning for work, and everybody's muted. And then when we get down to just our team and not, you know, the whole department kind of thing, it's a raise your hand kind of thing. And Teams actually gives, Teams actually gives you a number of who was in priority. So, but that would be for someone that's sitting there not saying anything, they're not going to put their hand up. So that's why I was wondering if this is for both or just.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Okay.
It's a great question.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay, so here, Beverly, let's talk about this one. Some people coming but never saying anything, you know, so they don't want to speak up. Now, first of all, a lot of people will say, well, they come all the time, but they don't say anything. How do I get them to talk? I'm like, I don't know. They might not want to talk. You know, they might be getting exactly what they need, and they might be in that room for their own benefit to experience it the way they are comfortable experiencing it. I didn't know what any of those words meant until I met my husband. And then I went, oh, some people are just quiet. It's not that he wants to speak and he's choosing not to, it's that he doesn't want to speak. So, you know, allowing people to just be who they are, because cancer doesn't change fundamentally who you are. How you show up into a group and greet a whole bunch of people is the exact same way you go through life. And how you meet your illness and navigate cancer and face every challenge is the exact same way generally you go through the rest of your life. So sometimes we can, you know, we will try on something new. Because I've become I used to be very risk averse, and with this clinical trial, I'm trying out risk. So that changed me. I made a decision to try and change something, but I know that my nature tends to be risk averse. So sometimes we step out of our comfort zone, but generally we go through our illness the way we go through our life. Just a little thought there. Okay.
We do have a question from Zoom.
Yay,
I'm sorry.
Zoom.
I'm
Hi,
sorry.
I see you. Okay.
So the question is, what do you do if no one wants to share?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, that's fabulous. Do we have that? Oh, we might not even have that. So you're number 7. Thank you, Zoom. I wish I knew your name and where you were from. So that happens. What's that? So, oh no, we don't have to. Hey, Sharon. Yeah, no, I was like, well, we don't want privacy. Sharon, I'm so glad you asked that question. Thank you. So this is what I say about people who, when you don't want to share. First of all, take a minute, a beat, and let it settle, because sometimes people just need to warm up. So don't rush, because everybody's nervous. Like, what if there's no, like, you know, they want to rush there. Don't do that. Hold back. And then I always have several prompts ready in my back pocket. And this is the one. I'll tell you what happened on Sunday. We had a support group, and I said, hey, who wants to update? Nobody wanted to update. It was really weird. And they were super quiet, but we had a brand new guy in the group. So I said, hey, everybody, we're just going to do a quick round robin, like we do speed round. Could you just say one thing that you wish you knew when you were newly diagnosed that will be your word of wisdom to share with our newbie who just walked in today? Could we do that? Well, we couldn't get them to shut up. Because once you open the flood, so the first person went, and then it wasn't just their word of wisdom. It was then a little update. And then the second person, and then it gets longer and longer, and then you're like doing serious time management. You just need to do something that gets the ball rolling, and you want to get the ball rolling with an open-ended question, not a closed question. I know you know all that. So really open, and what is your favorite cancer hack? What's the one thing you wish you knew on day one of cancer that you've learned? So if there isn't a newbie in the group, you can just ask that same question. Or what is the one thing that you, I'm not, I'll be honest, I mean, I think if you saw me earlier, you know, like the whole toxic positivity thing isn't my, so I'm not going to say like, what has cancer taught, you know, or what has made, you know, what have you found the good in cancer? People like those questions. I know, so you can, I'm just saying like you have freedom to choose whatever questions work for you. For me, I can't get it out of my mouth, you know, so I can't say what isn't authentically for me real, but some thoughts. We have a question back here, and then I want to, yeah. Oh, I think we're doing, check my time.
Yeah.
Mic, waiting for the mic, there we go.
Do you suppose these strategies could be applicable to meetings such as for groups such as AA, NA, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, etc.?
Great question, outside of the scope of what I know, but I encourage you to go find the answer on your own. I'm going to be speaking today about cancer support groups, so it's super, super specified. But if something speaks to you and you think it's relatable, hey, I'm all about cross-fertilization, but that's outside of the scope of my personal expertise. So I never want to step outside what I know. Right, exactly, yeah. Hi.
Hi. So I just have a question. I come from a very small rural hospital.
Yep.
And I currently am the clinical supervisor of our oncology unit.
Thank you.
We don't have a lot of people who we could get to a support group. It has been tried before.
Yeah.
I'm willing to try it again. I haven't tried it before. People.
Yep, it's hard.
But have you ever done like a Zoom and an in-person?
Yeah, it's tough. I'd say if you're starting, maybe do one or the other. Hybrid takes a little bit of a, you know what I mean? But absolutely people do it, and it works very well. And I would say if you're like just trying to get off the ground, well, it depends. I'd have to talk a little bit more with you about like, because you want to know the culture of where you are and what it feels like and what brings people together there. What's the community like? But you might,
It would be the cancer support group that would be bringing them together.
And would it be a specific type of cancer?
Nope.
It's all cancers?
Yep.
Then we need to talk. Because I was going to say, if it's a specific, if it's a specific cancer, you get a rock star presenter to Zoom in. That's my trick. If it's all cancers, yeah, a little different. That I might want to, I'm going to give you my card and we're going to talk. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, yay.
Just as a follow-up to that,
Yeah.
mostly, do you have more success when it's in person with evenings, weekends?
Oh.
A technical timing question, and how long do you make your meetings?
Great question. No, those are fantastic. Thank you for drilling down at that level. I wish I had a slide that said that. I'm going to add it after this. So thank you, Stacy. Is that it? Thank you. Awesome. Okay. It's amazing because I work with 60 groups. I have my own group, and I'll just tell you, my own group, it works very well Sundays, 2 to 4 p.m. So we get the people who work, the people who are busy, the not, which is interesting. Other groups swear by Saturdays. There's some groups in New York that like to meet in the weekdays in the evenings. It's every group has this like specific vibe, and you have to go with, and I would poll them to see how many people you would get, or just do your first meeting whenever you pick. Or, this is what I've had, a group do 2 or 3 meetings at different times, see who shows up and ask them would they be open to it. So you either do the online poll, or you do the poll by seeing who fills the seats, and then making the decision so that you like try 3 different times. I would try a weekend, daytime, a weeknight. A weekday is hard for people who work, so it's just kids. Yes, and nights are hard because of that too. And people don't want to drive at night as much, and the treatment makes the exhaustion, exactly.
Follow up to my question, how frequent and,
sorry, how long?
We talked about length, you said kind of 2 hours, but
Yeah.
ideal size that you find that works well, number of people?
That depends on, so the length I would say 90 minutes to 2 hours. And that includes coffee and schmooze, like gathering and like fun, and frequency is tough, my friend. It really depends on you and what your bandwidth is and what the entrance, how keen everyone is. So we have some people who do 4 times a year, and we have some people who do 4 times a month. And it really depends on what you're, so I know that's not a helpful answer, but I kind of want to tell you, choose your own adventure. Make it your own. Like, there is no rule here. There's not one hard and fast where it's got to be this, then this, or the formula doesn't work. The formula works if it works for you, and it works for the people who you're trying to serve, and they're showing up. I mean, that's how you'll know. You'll get instant feedback from it.
Lisa, I have a bit of a little bit to the side. I just finished my end-of-life doula certification. So my support group people
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
Super, super important work that you're doing.
Will be more my clients and their families. So when this stuff gets heated as far as when the client decides something, how do you distract those people who are getting heated so things don't get out of hand?
Distract is an interesting word that you used. So this is a little outside the scope because you're doing family work, you're doing end-of-life work, and this is a private, one family's experience as opposed to strangers sitting together. So it's a little bit of a different approach because there would need to be a sensitivity to the family you're walking into, the culture of that, the different roles that people are playing and how that impacts who's really in charge. I see some relatable, so that's a little bit different. And again, can I share my card with you and we can do that? But I just want to be sure that I get through the group work because that's a whole different area, not my area of expertise, but I'm happy to just jam with you on it, having been through palliative care 3 times as a user on the user end, but I can't speak to it as an expert. Is that fair? As a professional expert, I can speak to it as a patient expert.
Hi. I guess I have a multifaceted question.
Good.
I have to start a support group, and I haven't done one in a while.
Yeah.
I did them when I was much younger and a student intern. And there's a couple of issues. I know that there's people who are thinking about coming who have a hard time not focusing on things that are bothering them that are unrelated to the group context. Do you do any pre-screening to who you allow in the group, or do you just publicize it to anyone and everyone? And the other thing is, I think what I'm worried about going forward is being jumping too hard on people if I think somebody's going on too long versus not jumping in enough, separately.
Totally.
And do you just get that feel over time of when do I intervene? And
I love your questions. Was that?
That's it, yeah,
I just love those questions. I mean, those are phenomenal questions. So I've forgotten the first one already.
Somebody has a hard time.
It's so good that I just want to sit here with them for a minute and I enjoy it.
Just somebody who,
but the hard time with the bringing in outside things and vetting. Yeah, I'm with you.
Focusing on what's happening in that moment because they have other things in their life going on.
So I absolutely speak with everybody before they come to the support group.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about pre-gaming. Are we there yet? Okay. How do I make time? Look at you. It's like you're a shill. You're in the. Okay. Making time for newly diagnosed is the same as making time for a first timer, which is I always pre-game, which means that I have a conversation with them over the phone, talking about their story and their experiences. And then, depending on what they tell me, I lay heavier on different parts of the guidelines so that I set expectations before they walk in the room. So talking to them in advance is critical because you're going to know who's in that chair. It takes a lot of time, and I'm sorry when you're starting a support group. Now I'll get 1, 2, right? I know starting, that's where you have to, but the investment is going to be so worth it because you go over the guidelines. Now, sometimes going over the guidelines is 3 minutes, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's going to be so fun. And the other times it's like, okay, now listen up. And don't be offended if I have to shut you down. And sometimes I have to shut people down and say it like again and again at the end of the conversation. Not in a hurtful way, but in a, I just give this overview to everybody who I have to vet. And I call everybody. I'm going to tell you the 6 things I tell everybody. I know you're not going to need it, but I really need to say it. It's just my script, so bear with me. And then you go hard with the one, because you need to have a big old conversation to see who's coming in the room. And sometimes if I feel it's somebody who needs a little bit of extra help with containment, I'll say, how about at the first meeting you sit next to me? I'm going to keep you a seat next to me. This has been a special connect. This has been a great call. I really want you sitting next to me. Sometimes physical presence, because they can feel me tighten. Like I'm not doing this, but I am holding onto the clipboard a little bit tighter. And then and they notice it. And they'll go, oh, I've gone on, so I'm really into subtle cue and not so subtle cue. Did that help? And the second part was, it's okay to go hard in the beginning. Yeah, I know. The pulling the reins, I kind of lead with people. It's a good question because it's something that I think about an awful lot, Elizabeth, and I struggle with it myself. Like how do we do this? And sometimes you can just let it go because it's going to be fine. And other times you really do have to hold on tight. Don't apologize. Don't feel bad. What you're doing is protecting the time and the space and the care of every other person in that support group who might not want to go down a rabbit hole with that person. You're that gatekeeper. You're responsible for them. Give yourself permission to spare them and their time of not being well spent. Is that fair?
One little follow-up. I have another person who's come to other events that I've done.
Oh, microphone. We should keep the mic over here, shouldn't we? Oh, and we have Zoom questions. Holy moly. Batman, this is so fun.
This is very related, my last one. I live in a very small town, so I've met most of the people before.
Yeah.
So I have other people who are just pretty anxious. And
Yeah.
so I'm like a therapist a lot of the time. I'm comfortable with silence.
Right.
So I'll wait a second.
Yeah.
But then I have somebody who's a very anxious person, and they'll like jump in.
So create
sorta
that. So
like-
create the pause as a guideline. After somebody speaks,
Yeah.
we pause as a group, and and I'll let you know when it's like when the 90 seconds are up, and then you create the pace. The meeting's not running you; you're running the meeting. It's a good thing for life, right, guys? Anybody getting together with family? Holidays coming up. So you don't have to go. Don't let it get away from you. You can say, no, we're gonna let that settle. What that person said was so powerful. I just want us to sit with it for a sec, A Zoom, oh my gracious, she's saying 10 more minutes, and we have a Zoom question.
I was going to say, we have about 10 minutes left. I don't know how
I'm
much
going to
you want
do
to get.
one question here. Yeah, we're getting to the end, actually.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure you got through what you wanted to get through here
Thank
as well
you,
as the
friend.
discussion.
Yeah, let's do one more Zoom question, and then I'll zip through the end of the slides, people, and then I'll be around to answer anything.
Sure.
You're so fun.
So the question is, this person says, I'm curious about where referrals come from. Do you find that a sell from a medical provider can help generate people's courage to try a group?
Yes. And tell your medical providers, more support group referrals, please. I beg of you. Doesn't happen a lot. Yes, on steroids. Yes, yes. Thank you for the question, because I feel like it's a public service announcement. The more, the better. Yes, so if you have someone who is struggling and needs a lot of help, post-game it. Do that one-on-one, right? They might need a little bit more than you can give in it. And how do you prevent meetings from getting derailed, which we said. So let's say a different topic comes up or a different direction. Have one volunteer BV parking lot, and you're going to put hot say, oh, that is such a great point. It's not today's conversation, but we could schedule it for a future meeting if the group is interested. You create a parking lot list, and then the group votes on what they want to talk about. Nice, democratic, nobody gets hurt, there's no violence. Okay, navigating challenging group dynamics. Where did all my meeting, where did this 45 minutes go? That's what I want to know. Yeah, I'm going to skip this just because this was like a fun if you guys weren't chatty, I was going to throw this in, but you're so chatty. I want to just share this really quickly before we wrap up, okay? And I love this exercise. Julie Larson is one of my mentors, and she worked for Livestrong. She's an incredible social worker who works in cancer, with cancer patients. And she taught me this. Think about the people in your life. It's called the FDR. Now categorize them into 3 buckets, okay? The first are the feelers. So think about those feelers. Those are friends who know exactly what to say and do and what not to say and do. They know how to care for you, love you, listen to you, and hear you, and they're not scared of your big feelings. They celebrate your success with a pure heart and without jealousy. That means they're not writers, because every writer is jealous of it. This is one, if you're lucky, 2 people in your life, am I right? Like, if we're lucky, we get 2. Like, 3 would be like, oh my God, you're like golden. That's all we get. Doer friends, D, okay? This is the vast majority of the people in your life. They will do anything for you and they really care. They're your get it done friends. I always say, you'll get me off the island. You know, it's the friend that'll get you off the island. We know that one. But don't hit them up with how scared you're feeling on some random Tuesday afternoon when fear is overwhelming your soul, or when you're up at 3 a.m. with an existential crisis. They might respond with like cliches, not be very helpful. Then those cliches can be hurtful. Or they could get upset themselves and cry, and then you have to comfort them. Like, they have no skills to deal with this. You don't go to them with heaviness and weighty feelings, right? Because you're not going to get your needs met from those people. You go if you need to get taken off an island, not if you have an existential crisis. And the last is R, which are your respite friends, the distractors. These can cause a lot of hurt and frustration. So they are the friends. I love these people. They never ask how you're doing or remember what you're going through. They just don't. You know those people? You're shaking your head. They talk a lot about what's going on in their life because they just don't get it. They don't, this is the shocking part. You don't want to get rid of them, which is kind of surprising, because sometimes we get a little bit sick about talking about what's going on in our situation. And when that happens, you can always call one of them for distraction. They will never ask you about yourself, and they'll not prioritize you, but they are a great escape. And sometimes they're super fun. They'll like take you on adventures or pull you out of where you are, or if you're so stuck in your own thing and you just need to like, they'll go there with you, right? They're always game. But if you ask them for help, they're usually like very, very busy. Sorry. So you can't rely on them. They're not the right fit for that. So the moral of this story is know your FDRs. Know who to go to for what exactly in order to protect yourself. Know what bucket your friends are in to avoid disappointment. Don't go walking on the wrong door. Don't go fishing in the wrong fishing hole. That's a way to take care of yourself and protect yourself. So UVM, I had to look up because I was like, what's the M, you know? And right? Did you know that? It's the University of Green Mountains, which I love.
Because it's Green Mountains.
Is that gorgeous? And guess where I'm from? Home of the hoagie. I have to leave the Green Mountains, get on a plane, and go back to hoagies. I'm not happy about that. I do what? I actually live in Philly. I did. I'm born in Montreal. So I'll wrap up to keep my timekeeper happy, and then we'll take any other questions, ask her. I say Dr. Pauline Cook, who talks about ambiguous losses, which are losses that have no end when you're not quite certain what will be, and you live with a high degree of uncertainty in your grief. She says, ask me anything, just don't ask me if I ever recover. And I debated and debate whether to include this slide, but I love this slide because if you're a support group leader, know that you're walking in on sacred ground. People don't, heal over. Our cancer scars are way deeper than the stuff that, with wound care heals. They're the stuff, it's the stuff in the soul. And so know that you're on that sacred ground, respect it, join it, but also know that, and this is why, to take us back to the beginning, do your self-care, in order to take care of yourself while you're taking care of everyone else. I'm so grateful to you for being here, being curious, asking your engaging questions, and being a part of this experience. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I did put up this because in case we are out of time, that way you know how to find me. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to every single one of you. And I'm really so happy that I could be here in Vermont with you. I love it here. Don't make me go home.
We do have a few more minutes.
Yay, we did it.
Got a question down
So
here.
there's a question here, and then Denise has a question. I think there's an online question I really want to get to. So if somebody hasn't spoken.
Lisa, what is the remedy when a support group leader has seemingly lost the trust and confidence of the rest of the group?
Has lost the trust. We'd have to talk about why that would happen. But that might be a longer conversation. I want to be sure we get to also folks who haven't.
Ipso facto, regardless of the reason, has lost the trust and confidence of the other members of the group.
That's a tough one. I would say that's when you have to bring in the trainer, the person who is in charge to help work through 100%. Because I'd have to know a little bit more about that to understand. Yeah. I'm going to just go. I hope you will forgive me. There's someone on Zoom who wants to ask, and I want to bring them into the room, okay?
So the question on Zoom is, what are your thoughts or opinions on non-cancer patients or non-cancer survivors running these support groups?
Oh, I think, we do peer support. I think that's fabulous. Yeah, I think anybody who is trained to do this, and again, it might look very different because it wouldn't be peer-to-peer. So you wouldn't be speaking from, so thank you, virtual community, for that great question. Oh, Sharon, we love you, Sharon. Is it
And
the
she's
same?
from Boston.
Oh, God, it's the same. Sharon, Boston is like I'm obsessed with Boston. Boston is my #1 and DC is my #2. I love Boston. So invite me out and we'll chat about it in Boston. No, so I think I want to say that there is no best practice in who leads a support group. It's that the support group has to be facilitated in a very respectful, contained, very careful and thoughtful way. So it needs intentionality. That does not define who leads it. But if you have a person with cancer leading it, you just have to be sure that that person knows how to do the self-care so that they are well taken care of throughout the process. And we have 1 minute left. Does Denise want to jump in?
Well,
Let's do it fast. Let's do Zoom fast.
Is it on? I might have to email you about this one, but
Sure.
My husband said to me last night, I'm 5.5 years in remission from leukemia. He said, I think you survived your cancer and I did not. And he was my rock. I don't think I'd be alive if it wasn't for him. And I came to this today trying to figure out what I can do to help him. So maybe I can just email you.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you for being brave to share that. I am so impressed with your husband that he could come honestly to you and lay that at your feet. It speaks volumes about your marriage. I just want to say, just as a human being, that's the most beautiful thing. And support for the caregiver is essential. Finding a space for him to speak in a support group space where there's no patients, just caregivers, is critical. Because caregivers, don't make them talk about this in front of their patient. Because let them say everything they need to say that they don't necessarily want the patients witnessing. Yeah. Let them have that moment. So if it's a specific cancer, the American Cancer Society overall, but if it's specific, I'd rather help you if it's multiple myeloma or something specific. I can get you to that national organization that's going to have support, and then you're going to want support for the caregiver separate from patients. Let him say what he just said to other people who go, oh God, we get it.
Okay.
We get it.
All right.
I'm grateful to you for being so brave.
Okay.
And huge props to you for having a beautiful marriage where you can talk honestly. Not a given, man.
Yeah.
Not a given.
Okay. Can I still email you?
Always. Okay. What are you talking? I'm giving you the price sign. It's not going to work. Molly, that's it. We're done. We're seeing Molly.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate it. I think this was an amazing session. I think we're really lucky to have a little one-on-one time with Lisa. So thank you so much for being here with us, for offering this second session, which I think was this amazing insight into how to navigate these areas. And I don't know, I'm really hopeful that I see all these people who may start helping us with support groups, because I think we are definitely in need of more of them.
Oh, good.
For everyone, please join us for our final plenary next door, microbiome, kind of hot, nourishing your bugs. So come on over, and we will be finishing up the conference over in there. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Molly. You're wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.